Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Andisheh Conversation. By the end of this episode, you will know why I chose this background. If you've been following the podcast, you know that over the past few episodes, I've been talking a lot about modern parenting and how the way we live today, our neighborhoods, our routine, our schedules are not really aligned with what children and honestly, even adults need. And in those conversations, I kept coming back to one idea as a potential solution: co-housing. I talked about what co-housing is, how it works, and even how you might build one. And at some point, I genuinely thought, okay, this might be it. This might be the practical way to recreate what village feeling is like and what we are missing. But today's episode is a bit different because after a few years of actually trying to make it happen, taking courses, talking to people, exploring options, I've reached a very different conclusion. Not that co-housing is a bad idea, but that it is incredibly hard, much harder than it sounds, and in many cases, almost unrealistic. So today I want to do two things. First, a quick recap of what we talked about before, and then I want to walk you through what I've learned, the real practical obstacles that don't show up in theory. And finally, what I think actually works better. So just to quickly recap, the core problem we've been talking about is that modern life, especially in places like the US, is very fragmented. Kids don't have easy access to other kids. They don't have free play built in their daily lives. Everything is scheduled, structured, supervised. And as a result, kids miss out on independent play. Parents feel isolated and everything becomes harder than it needs to be. So co-housing comes in as a proposed solution. In theory, it's simple. A group of families intentionally come together, design a neighborhood, include sharing spaces, and create a kind of built-in community. Kids can play together, adults support each other, and life becomes more connected. It sounds amazing, and there are examples of this working in the US. It's not imaginary. But the number of successful projects is actually very small compared to how appealing the idea is. And that gap, that's where things get interesting. So why it's so difficult? Let me walk you through what I think are the main challenges. One, the name itself, co-housing. I didn't expect this to be such a big issue, but it really is. The word co-housing carries a lot of baggage. As soon as people hear it, they think no privacy, shared living spaces, something like college dorms or co-living. Even when you explain it carefully for a long time, that each family has their own home, their own kitchen, their own life, that first impression sticks. It's like the name plants a seed in the back of people's mind, and it's very hard to undo. And what I personally have in mind is actually much simpler. It's not some radical lifestyle. It's just a neighborhood, something like a cul-de-sac, but slightly more dense, enough families so that there are kids different ages, enough shared safe outdoor space so kids can actually play. That's it. But the word co-housing makes it feel like something much more extreme, and that alone pushes people away. Number two, the process is extremely demanding. The second challenge is the process itself. In most co-housing models, you don't just buy a home. You become part of a group that finds the land, design the project, works with architects, make decisions together, navigates financing, legal structures, construction. And most of the time, these are not developers. They're just regular people, busy people, parents. So what happens is you suddenly need to learn a huge amount about real estate, construction, and group decision making, all while living your normal life. It's basically like taking a second full-time job just to eventually have a place to live. And realistically, very few people are willing or able to get to go through that. Number three, it reverses the natural order of relationships. This one I think is the most important. Co-housing tries to engineer community first. You gather a group of people, you build relationships intentionally, and then you create a physical space. But in real life, historically, it works the other way around. People move into a neighborhood. Kids start playing outside. They meet other kids. Parents meet through their kids. And then naturally, some relationships become close, some stay casual, Some never really form, and that's completely okay. But in co-housing, there's this implicit expectation that we are all going to be a community, and that creates pressure. People start thinking, "Well, what if I don't get along with them? What if our parenting styles are different? What if I want space?" And those concerns are actually very valid because in real life, you don't click with everyone. You shouldn't have to. For it's not about the people, it's about the environment. This was probably my biggest realization. We tend to think if we just find the right people, everything will work. But I don't think that's true anymore. I think what actually matters is the environment. If you have safe outdoor spaces, walkable areas, enough densities of families, kids who are not overscheduled, then something almost magical happens. Kids go outside, they find each other, they start playing, and then everything else follows. Naturally, no planning, no forcing, no structure. I've seen this before. We had this experience. And even here in Austin, on our street, my kids play outside a lot, but they're often the only ones, which tells this issue is not willingness, it's the surrounding culture and structure. Other kids are either inside on screens or constantly in scheduled activities. So even if the physical space is okay, the ecosystem isn't quite there. Okay, so what am I doing instead? So after all of this, my thinking has shifted. I still believe deeply in the problem I'm trying to solve. In fact, I would probably believe in it more than ever. But I don't think the co-housing project is the right path for me. Instead, I have a different dream. It's a dream that I can't afford to build yet, but I genuinely hope I'll be able to make it happen. One day, I want to create a community center built specifically around families, children, communication, and genuine human connection. If you have listened to previous episodes, you may remember that I had a website for a co-housing project. I've actually changed that website. It's now focused on this new vision. I haven't really marketed it yet because I'm simply not at this stage where I can make it a reality. But the idea is there and it's something I'm slowly working toward. One thing I did during this journey was visit places like Lifetime and other community centers to understand why they don't naturally become the neighborhood hub that families are looking for. And I realized that while many of them offer great programs and facilities, they're still missing something fundamental. They're not designed around free play. Children move from one scheduled activity to the next. Parents drop them off, pick them up, and leave. The space isn't really encouraging children to simply exist together, explore, invent games, and build friendships on their own while parents naturally connect with one another. To me, that's the missing piece. So until I can build something like that, I'm focusing on what I can control. I organize a lot of play dates for my kids. I pay attention to new housing developments, looking for neighborhoods that might naturally become places where children can safely roam and families spend time outside together. I ask people constantly if they have discovered neighborhoods that have this kind of culture. And whenever I hear about one, I go visit it. And I'm also planning to organize more community events, not because I think they're the final solution, but they create opportunities for people to meet. Most of the time, I'm doing it for my own children. If my kids meet wonderful families along the way, that's already a success. Maybe over time, with enough small efforts like these, we'll slowly build the community we are looking for. It's certainly more work than I wish it were. Sometimes my children become close friends with another child, but then we discover that their schedule is completely full. Every afternoon is occupied with activities, and finding even one day to get together becomes almost impossible. That's exactly the challenge of modern life. People want connection, kids want play, but our schedules and the way we have designed our communities often make these simple things surprisingly difficult. So I guess if I had to summarize everything, co-housing is a beautiful idea, but in practice, it's very difficult. Not because people don't want community, but because the process goes against how community naturally forms. And instead of trying force connection, we might be better off designing environments where connection happens. on its own. Thank you for listening. If you have had experience with co-housing or if you have found neighborhoods that really works for your family, I would genuinely love to hear from you, and I'll see you in the next episode.